Picture this. You are sitting right behind the walls of this small, practically undefended city.
Right.
And outside those walls, an army of 150,000 heavily armed soldiers is marching directly toward you.
Just a terrifying scenario.
Yeah. I mean, you have essentially zero physical defenses.
Yeah.
The few officers you do have left are completely panicking.
It is the ultimate fight or flight moment, like a complete, terrifying loss of control over whether you live or die.
Exactly. But instead of running and, instead of succumbing to that panic, you put on a simple, elegant robe. You walk up to the top of the city wall, accompanied only by two young lads. You light some incense. You sit down. And with a perfectly serene smile on your face, you start slowly playing a lute.
It's incredible.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today we are looking at a truly fascinating source document. It's an essay from August 2009 by an author named Xu Feng, and it's titled The Psychological Qualities to be Chanyuan Celestial.
It really is a remarkably unique text. I mean, it takes these ancient, blood-soaked military histories from the Chinese Three Kingdoms period.
Right.
And it weaves them into this highly specific philosophy of intense spiritual and psychological resilience.
So our mission today is to extract those concepts. We are going to figure out how this philosophy actually applies to your own pursuit of mental toughness and how it maps out the path to what the author calls a bright future. We are looking at some wild historical anecdotes here. So, okay, let's unpack this, starting with that guy playing the lute on the city wall.
Yeah, so the figure on the wall is Zhuge Liang. And this is the famous historical event known as the Empty Town Bluff.
Okay.
To really understand the gravity of his calm there, you have to look at the catastrophic failure that put him in that position to begin.
It wasn't his fault, right?
No, not directly. An important defensive position called Jiding was just lost, entirely because Zhuge Liang's subordinate general, Ma Su, flat out disobeyed direct orders.
Wow.
And that disobedience created this massive tactical vacuum.
Leaving the enemy general, Sima Yi, free to approach Zhuge Liang's city of Xicheng with a massive, overwhelming force of 150,000 soldiers.
Right.
And Zhuge Liang is sitting there with, civil officials and maybe 2,500 soldiers?
Yeah, 2,500. Mathematically, I mean, it is an impossible situation to win by force. The natural human reaction for those officials hovering in that space between life and death is absolute terror.
Yet Zhuge Liang dons a simple Taoist dress. He sits by one of the towers with his lute, burns his incense, and just smiles.
He even plays rhythmically.
Right. He amuses himself. But this brings up a massive question for me. If we put this in modern terms, it's like a CEO sitting in a glass-walled conference room.
Yeah.
Casually playing solitaire on their phone while a hostile corporate takeover is physically storming through the office doors.
That's a great image.
Right. So is that CEO actually calm, or is this just the ultimate theatrical performance to save their own life?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the text refuses to separate the outward performance from the internal state.
Interesting.
The author basically argues that you cannot fake a bluff of that magnitude. To play that lute rhythmically while looking down at 150,000 hostile troops
was no sweat.
Exactly. Without a single tremor of fear or a bead of sweat, it requires an extraordinary internal reality. The physical battle happening outside the walls is merely a mirror reflecting the internal state of the mind.
Wow.
And the text defines this ironclad internal stillness as having outstanding psychological quality.
And the author really drives that point home by contrasting Zhuge Liang's stillness with the reactions of another famous leader, Liu Bei.
Right, the plum garden.
Yes, specifically during a seemingly harmless dinner in a plum garden.
It's a brilliant juxtaposition.
Yeah.
So Liu Bei is having drinks with the incredibly powerful warlord Cao Cao. At this point in history, Cao Cao holds all the cards.
Yeah.
I mean, he could execute Liu Bei on a whim.
Just snap his fingers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And during the meal, Cao Cao points a finger at Liu Bei, then at himself, and casually declares, "The only heroes in the world are you and me."
Which is a terrifyingly loaded statement.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
The psychological trap. Cao Cao is testing Liu Bei to see if he harbors grand ambitions, and Liu Bei completely cracks under the pressure.
He does.
He is so utterly shocked by this comment that he literally drops his spoon and chopsticks on the floor.
Just loses his grip entirely.
Yeah, and to cover up his panic, he blames the trembling hands on a sudden crack of thunder.
Right. He says, "What a thunder," and it was quite close. But the text points out that this physical reaction, the drop chopsticks,
Mm.
it exposes a fundamentally inadequate psychological quality.
Right.
It reveals an internal structure that shatters under sudden pressure. And Zhu Feng doesn't treat this as just some embarrassing dinner party faux pas.
No, it's way deeper than that.
He explicitly links this momentary physical failure to Liu Bei's devastating military failures much later in life.
This connects to the burning of the camps, doesn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Later on, Liu Bei ignores the entire strategic security of his country. He attaches far too much importance to a personal grievance.
Seeking revenge for his fallen brother, Guan Yu.
Exactly. Because he allows his emotional volatility to just override the grand strategy, an enemy general from East Wu named Lu Xun is able to exploit that blind rage.
He walks right into it.
He does. Lu Xun burns out Liu Bei's military camps across a distance of 700 li.
And just for context for you listening, 700 li is roughly over 200 miles.
This massive.
Imagine 200 miles of your own military camps, your men, your supplies, completely wiped out in flames. The author is suggesting that the man who drops his chopsticks at a surprising comment is the exact same man who loses his entire army.
They are symptoms of the exact same internal disease. It's an inability to master one's own emotional reactions.
The drop chopsticks and the burning camps both stem from a failure to maintain internal equilibrium when confronted by external stress.
That's it exactly.
So if physical survival requires that kind of ironclad internal equilibrium, what happens when the attack isn't aimed at your city walls, but directly at your sense of self? The text actually argues that psychological threats to the ego can be literally just as deadly as an invading army.
Yeah, this is where the text transitions from the physical battlefield to the battlefield of the mind. It examines Zhu Yu, the outstanding general of East Wu.
Okay.
By all accounts, Zhu Yu possessed immense talent and capability. He was brilliant, but he harbored a fatal psychological flaw.
A brittle ego.
A very brittle, all-consuming ego.
Yeah, he was completely eaten alive by his rivalry with Zhu Yang. The text says he was literally irate to death at the shockingly young age of 36.
Right.
His dying words were him sighing out, "O God, since thou made Zhu Yu, why did thou also create Zhu Yu Yang?"
It is just a tragic illustration of a fragile psychological structure. To understand the mechanics of this, think of Zhu Yu's ego like a rigid oak tree.
Okay.
It stands tall and looks really impressive, but in a hurricane it snaps because it cannot bend. He couldn't handle the existence of a peer, let alone a rival. The humiliation and resentment literally physically destroyed him.
And then you contrast Zhu Yu's rigid oak tree with the mind of Sima Yi.
Oh, yes.
Now, Sima Yi is the exact same general who was marching on Zhu Zhiliang's empty town earlier.
The guy with 150,000 troops.
Exactly. So in a later conflict, Zhu Zhiliang tries to deliberately provoke and humiliate Sima Yi to draw him out into a battle. He does this by sending Sima Yi a woman's skirt.
Which, in the context of ancient Chinese military culture, that is an unbelievably pointed insult. It was designed to publicly question Sima Yi's courage and humiliate him right in front of his own men.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Think about how a modern person reacts to a targeted insult. Imagine a bitter rival sending you a nasty, custom-made internet meme designed specifically to humiliate you publicly.
Yeah, most people would lose their minds.
Right. Zhu Yu would have burst a blood vessel and immediately launched an attack. But Sima Yi, he treats his own ego like water.
That's a great way to put it.
You can strike water with a sword, but you can't wound it. Sima Yi accepts the skirt kindly, and he actually wears it immediately, just to show Zhu Liang that the insult didn't land.
He leans right into it.
Yeah. He ends up frustrating Zhu Liang instead.
It is a brilliant display of psychological mastery.
Yeah.
Sima Yi thrives because he recognizes the underlying mechanic of an insult. An insult only has power if the victim accepts the premise of the insult.
Wow. Yes.
By wearing the skirt, he neutralizes the attack entirely.
And the text uses these historical moments to give us a concrete definition of what we are dealing with here. The author writes that psychological quality is a comprehensive reflection of a person's temperament, character, thinking, emotion, IQ, tolerance, and faith.
It embodies the entirety of a person's inner architecture. The text sets up a very clear dichotomy here. Poor psychological quality, the kind that gets you killed by an enemy or by your own rage, is defined by self-abasement.
Right.
Being bigoted, testiness, pessimism, narrow-mindedness, and being easily flurried.
That perfectly describes Zhu Yu dying of anger and Liu Bei dropping his chopsticks.
Exactly.
On the flip side, the text defines good psychological quality as being confident, generous, strong, stable, energetic, optimistic, tolerable, magnanimous, and calm.
The ego really is the ultimate vulnerability. If your sense of self is narrow and easily flurried, you don't even need an enemy to fire an arrow. You will inevitably defeat yourself.
So it's shedding the ego keeps you alive in a war. What is the ultimate endgame of this mindset? Who is the person that actually masters this?
Right.
The text pivots right here to its core philosophy, introducing the concept of a Chanyuan celestial.
And this is where all those historical anecdotes crystallize into a really profound spiritual framework.
Yeah.
The author defines Chanyuan celestials as the most civilized, most cultivated, most intelligent, active, and creative people.
The phrasing used is that they are common but above the common and completely free from vulgarity.
Right.
But the foundational requirement to reach this state is intense. The text states that a Chanyuan celestial must hand their life over to the greatest creator and their lifetime to the Tao.
Yes.
And because they do this, they can remain completely serene in the face of danger. Their face doesn't change color, their heart doesn't skip a beat. So what does this all mean? I actually want to pose this directly to you, the listener. If you hand your life over to the Tao or the greatest creator, are you just throwing your hands up and giving up control? Or is this actually the ultimate psychological hack to eliminate panic so you can finally see the board clearly?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is absolutely a cognitive hack.
Okay.
In Sufang's framework, handing your life to the greatest creator or the Tao isn't necessarily about passive religious submission.
What is it then?
The Tao represents the ultimate, uncontrollable natural order of the universe. By aligning yourself with it, you are systematically stripping away your ego's delusion that it can control everything.
The profound shift in risk calculation.
Precisely. Anxiety, panic, and the fight-or-flight response, they all stem from the fear of loss.
Right.
Losing your status, losing your comfort, losing your life. The text suggests that if you have already cognitively surrendered your attachment to those outcomes,
If you accept that the universe will do what it does,
exactly, then the fear evaporates. Accepting the absolute worst-case scenario removes the anxiety that totally clouds human judgment.
if you aren't terrified of dying, you can sit on the city wall and play the lute because the outcome no longer dictates your internal state.
Right.
But the wild part is that this detachment doesn't make them passive, because you would assume that surrendering your life to the universe means you just sit around waiting for things to happen.
You'd think so, yet the text describes the Chanyuan celestial as having a relentless, unstoppable drive. They never retreat. They never feel discouraged in the face of extreme difficulties.
The explicit rule in the text is, as long as they breathe, as long as there is even 1 out of 10,000 of hope, they will not give up.
Not ever.
On a long journey, they will overcome all obstacles with an indomitable spirit. The author writes that they would rather die on the journey for the destination than stop short of their goal. Not a single step backward.
It's a fascinating paradox to unpack, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
You have the absolute surrender of the ultimate outcome paired with an absolute ferocious commitment to the present action. You accept you might die, which actually frees you to fight with perfect clarity.
I love that concept. But let's bring this down to earth for a second.
Sure.
Because you and I, and the listener, we are not facing invading armies of 150,000 soldiers on a daily basis.
Thankfully, no.
Right, we aren't usually hovering between life and death. So how does this intense philosophy apply to a normal Tuesday?
Huh.
What about dealing with the absurdities of modern life, the haters, the office politics, the daily drudgery?
Well, the author actually anticipated this. The text provides highly specific mechanical guidance for mundane battles, which arguably wear down our psychological quality just as effectively as existential threats.
Yeah, let's talk about the strategy for dealing with ridicule, slander, and people who just want to create difficulties for you.
Yeah.
The text advises a stance of total immovability. It says to sit tight in the fishing boat despite the rising wind and waves. To say to yourself, I stand steadfastly on the ground.
The underlying mechanic here is boundary setting. You allow the social friction to blow around you, but you totally refuse to let their wind move your boat.
Then there's the advice for what the text calls unreasonably troublesome or importunate situations.
The daily grind.
This is when people are just being impossible. The explicit instruction is do not escalate the contradictions, do not fight fire with fire.
Right.
Instead, be open, flexible, witty, and tactful. It even advises using humor, or, and this part really caught my eye, pretending to be foolish to get rid of drudgery so you avoid entanglement.
Hmm.
But wait, I have to challenge this. Earlier, we established that a Chanyuan celestial is fiercely intelligent, relentless, and never takes a step backward.
Hmm.
Isn't pretending to be a fool a massive contradiction? Isn't that playing weak and retreating?
This raises an important question about the difference between perceived strength and actual strength.
Okay, tell me more.
Pretending to be foolish in this specific context isn't a retreat. It's a tactic of high-level energy conservation.
Walk me through that. How does playing dumb conserve energy?
Think back to Sima Yi in the skirt.
Right.
Getting into a screaming match with an unreasonable colleague, or trying to prove your superior intellect to someone who is actively committed to misunderstanding you, it requires a massive expenditure of psychological energy.
It's exhausting.
Totally exhausting. It pulls you entirely into their chaotic reality. You basically allow them to dictate the terms of the engagement.
So by playing the fool, you are refusing the engagement altogether.
Exactly. Choosing to play the fool is a highly active strategic choice to protect your internal peace. It prevents you from being dragged down by individuals who possess bad psychological quality.
Right, you just sidestep them.
Yeah, you are hoarding your relentless drive for the actual journey, not wasting it on a toll booth operator.
That completely flips the perspective. And speaking of the journey, the text leans deeply into overcoming frustration without losing that internal fire.
It does.
It mandates that one must never feel inferior or stop their marching process. It pulls from traditional sayings to illustrate this. The text quotes, "Where hills bend, streams wind, and the pathway seems to end, past dark willows and flowers in bloom lies another village."
That is just a beautiful cognitive reframe. It teaches the mind that just because an obstacle obscures the view of the path ahead, it does not mean the path has ceased to exist.
It also quotes, "When it is dark in the east, it is light in the west," or "When things are dark in the south, there is still light in the north."
Yeah.
It's an instruction to maintain absolute faith that if you keep moving, a door will open. And this brings us to the ultimate synthesis of Zhuo Feng's essay.
Right.
He concludes by stating that everything we've unpacked today, the confidence, the magnanimity, the optimism, the calm, the tolerance, these constitute the 8 attainments required to be a Chanyuan celestial.
And the text offers a massive guarantee here. It claims that if you cultivate these 8 attainments, integrating your intellect, your emotion, and your faith, there is no flame mountain that is impassable.
No obstacle too big.
Right. There's no earthly difficulty you cannot surmount. You will approach the celestial world smoothly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I really want you, the listener, to think about the practical application of this ancient philosophy in your own life.
Definitely.
You're going to face crises. Maybe it's a major career threat that feels like an army at your gates. Or maybe it's just the daily drudgery of dealing with an endlessly unreasonable colleague.
Yeah, both are tough.
In every one of those moments, you have a distinct choice in how your internal state dictates your external reaction. You can choose to be like Liu Bei, dropping your chopsticks at the first sign of pressure, letting your brittle ego burn down your life's work.
Or you can choose to be like Sima Yi, treating your ego like water and just casually wearing the skirt meant to destroy you.
You can put on a smile, light the incense, and play the lute. But I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, a question that builds on the very mechanics we've explored today.
Okay.
The text focuses heavily on projecting calm outward to defeat an external enemy, just like Zhu Zhang did. But what if the enemy isn't outside the walls?
Oh, wow.
What if those 150,000 screaming soldiers aren't a rival army, a hostile boss, or an internet troll? What if they are your own internal anxieties, your own crushing self-doubts, your own fears of failure? What does your personal empty town bluff look like when the army is inside your own head and you need to trick your own mind into believing you are completely, unshakably in control?